It's time for the final epic conclusion to John Gwynne's Bloodsworn trilogy, and that is The Fury of the Gods. So hello, my name is Zach. This channel, it's mostly science fiction and fantasy reviews, and today I'm tackling the final volume of John Gwynne's Bloodsworn trilogy, Fury of the Gods. So after two books that were some better than others, I really liked the start and the depth of the world that were given in the very first book. The second book, a lot of setup. So obviously the final book of any trilogy is going to be the epic conclusion. And we're definitely given that today in Fury of the Gods. The final battle is upon us finally, and we see the resolution of all the character arcs. And that's my closest dragon shirt I could wear is Dragonite from Pokemon. So in fitting fashion, this is the final battle with Leek Rifa, the dragon god. And I was very excited to see that finally play out on the page in the book. So what I liked about the book was, the epic battles. So we're finally given this payoff, the final fight between Ulfir, the wolf god, and Leek Rifa, the dragon god. That dynamic finally plays out. That was, of course, foreshadowed the entire trilogy. That's what we've been waiting for on the epic scale. Of course, there's the character stories, and that happens in the book. We get the payoffs of all the POVs, which were many, but the big battle is, that's the most fun I had in this saga. I like the world building and the world we're given, but the final battle was, action packed. That's a common, I think, that I've read in other people's reviews is, yes, all the action is finally here. And it's a little bit of a negative, only because similar to the other books, I wasn't quite as aware of Norse terminology. So when these big epic battles that I feel like it was about the second half of the book was all like lots of fights until kind of the epilogue when things slow down finally. But in the description of some of the fights, there was just so much going on, and similar to the first couple books, the POV switching, I was, again, in my mind, trying to keep everyone straight of who's battling where for the human characters. Obviously, you have Leek Rifa and Ulfir, Wolves and Dragons, and Rata the Rat God. They're all fighting, and when they're described, it's, on this epic scale. And I like this is another positive, I like the writing style where we're given kind of a glimpse of what the gods are doing, and then the next kind of chapter section will shift to like the gods are battling over here in the background, and now here's what the human characters are, of course, doing in the foreground. They have their own fights while the gods are battling, so we don't really get the full description of dragons fighting wolves and that kind of epic god on god battle. It'll, because I guess maybe it's too epic, then we're given more the human scale of what Varg and all the other POV main characters are doing in their admittedly smaller scale battles compared to gods battling. So that shift was, I think, well done from a writing standpoint, how it's not just gods fighting, ripping apart the countryside with their powers. And a little bit of spoiler, not to go too much, but yes, there's another god that makes kind of a last minute appearance, which was really cool. And unfortunately, again, this is me not being as versed in the mythology of the world, even though I'm aware of like Ragnarok and some of the stuff from, of course, Marvel. You have to know it from Thor, some of these names, but not really the history of the hierarchy is the best way to describe it. Like in the Greek pantheon, you have like Zeus the king, and then you have he married Hela, and then there's like this hierarchy, which is, a lot of people know that. I mean, it's more Western thing. People know kind of like the interpersonal relationship between brothers and sisters and parents and lineage, because it's more modern culture. And I wasn't as versed on the relationships in this family dynamic of the gods family, so that maybe took away some of the impact a little bit. But some of the other this final appearance at the end was interesting. It wasn't like a super twist, but it was just another way to kind of hype up this finale of gods battling gods, and now there's another family member makes an appearance towards the end. But then you were given the switch to the lower scale. So going through some of my notes, just talked about the battles. One thing I wanted to point out was in this my own maybe lack of knowledge, when Gwynne describes some of the monsters that are fighting, he doesn't use as like verbose words as maybe like a Sanderson or Robert Jordan, or immediately after this. And why this comes to mind, because after I finished this, I read James Islington's Licanius trilogy, the final book in that, and kind of the contrast of going from Gwynne to Islington, it really kind of reinforced maybe what I missed in the battles. Whereas Islington, by contrast, will describe, the talons and the slithering bodies. And so in my mind, even though I couldn't totally remember what the character, what the monster that's supposed to look like, but the descriptions of like this overly verbose language, maybe not overly, but this additional language to describe things, I could see that, this is kind of like a spider-ish monster that they're fighting right now, or yes, that this body of a monster is more snake-like. And that was really visible kind of in my mind's eye during the Islington fights. Whereas contrasting over here to the Gwynne and Fury of the Gods, maybe it was almost too fast-paced, and the battles were happening, and I know they're fighting these monsters and like the hordes of Leek Rifa's army, but I couldn't really kind of discern of what kind of monster they might be fighting, and just that it was the humans fighting these monsters, and all this battle is happening. So a little muddy in my mind, where you're not given this kind of Tolkien-esque, it's not orcs and trolls that are fighting, which we know kind of what they look like. This is Norse monsters that I wasn't quite as familiar, that I need to my own knowledge and read up on what I'm supposed to look at, what I'm supposed to view in the battle. So that was one of the negatives maybe. And then the POV switches, of course, were, I liked it more this time that we switched back to the human side, because maybe I was craving that god epic battle, and we got that, and I like that they switched to the human side, and it all does wrap up, and everyone kind of has their concluding arc, and like whether it's vengeance or like a little bit of love interest in one of the characters, it does kind of wrap up nicely. And I thought it was maybe a little too many characters. I wish it maybe stuck to one or two. Not that I didn't like some of the characters, but I think just for clarity in my mind, we should have maybe stuck to just a couple POVs, and just to kind of wrap it up a little more. So that's this is maybe a little rambling. I tried to write down the notes, but it was a trilogy. It was a lot going on, and a lot happened in this book, and it happened very quickly with the more dense, maybe not dense, but just concise writing style compared to others, which helped or hindered my kind of enjoyment of this final chapter. And again, this could just be me and where my mindset when I'm reading this. That's what I feel I get from a lot of books. Sometimes I'm really in the mood for one type of writing or one style, and I'm really craving that, and you just get lost in that world. Other times, even though the book may be well written, and by the glowing reviews, I'm sure it's well written for a specific type of reader, you may enjoy this, you may not. I watched, coincidentally, How to Train Your Dragon after this, and having that visual in my mind of these Vikings and what they're wearing in the armor as they're fighting the dragons in How to Train Your Dragon, it kind of connected oddly back to the book, which I had finished like the day before we watched the movie. That I was like, oh, okay, this is maybe how the battle looked. This is how the characters should be looking, what the world probably looks like, these villages. And maybe I'm just a visual person, even though I love reading books and I picture things in my mind's eye. Watching How to Train Your Dragon while just having finished The Fury of the Gods really cemented the worlds oddly in my mind, and it helped paint that picture, which again is maybe my criticism of Gwynne's writing style, that he didn't overly describe some things, or it was just a little too much going on as he wrapped up this action-packed finale of all the big fights, all the revenge arcs, all the character arcs had to come to a conclusion, and we had to have god-level battles and human-level battles in everyone's story all wrap up nicely in this book. So on the whole, it was still an enjoyable read. I really liked the first novel, so in the second one. I think this third one wrapped it up nicely. It wasn't like a banger, knock it out of the park, at least for me, at least for this point. But again, having read more other works afterwards, it makes me want to go back and read it, because I feel like I probably missed some of the nuance in the writing. Having watched How to Train Your Dragon, I was reading some Thor comics just to get some extra Norse level visuals in my mind. And I think having read some of this, I was reading the Immortal Thor run. I think that also helped, again, just paint that picture that I maybe missed, and I should go back and reread this entire trilogy to have a better visual of some of the terms, what things should look like, and how I should picture these fights, these journeys, which I again felt was great in the first book. And this third book, the god battles are great. Just so much going on. So on the whole, maybe I give it like a 4 out of 5. Still a great read. I still think you might read it, you might enjoy it if that's what you're craving. There's definitely a lot of Norse action, a lot of that, not really grimdark in the Abercrombie style, but just a dirty, lived-in, realistic world that kind of Tolkien-esque, this is a world that's been around because we're at the end of the Age of Gods, and then the gods come back, and that's the whole point of this trilogy, that the gods have returned to a world that was previously decimated by the gods, and now humans are slowly dealing with the return of gods, and then they stage like a comeback, partnering with Ulfir the wolf god to take on Ligrifa the dragon god. So it's dragons and wolves and gods fighting, and we definitely do get that here in Fury of the Gods. So those are my thoughts and a little bit of a summary of some of the events and what I liked and disliked in John Gwynne's Fury of the Gods. Thanks for watching this video, and have a great day.